talk for a minute about casting. You had a real challenge finding someone to play the role of Popeye Doyle.
Well, yeah. Gene Hackman was not our first choice at all. In fact, he wasn't even on the list. The first guy I wanted for the role of Popeye was Jackie Gleason. And you guys remember Jackie Gleason? Sure. Yeah. To the moon. But the Jackie Gleason that was in The Hustler, he was Eddie Egan. And he was what you'd call a black Irishman, you know, a drinker, heavy-set guy, dark personality, poetic in a way. And Dick Zanuck, who was head of Fox, said to me, no way we're going to use Gleason. That's out of the question. Because Gleason had made a film for them called Gigot, which was a silent movie about a clown. And it was the biggest disaster in the history of 20th Century Fox. I think it did zero business for them. And they wouldn't go with Gleason. And I had spoken to Gleason, and he was willing to do it. The next guy we went to was Peter Boyle, who was in a film called Joe, where he played a bigot with a baseball bat who used to go into minority bars and beat guys over the head. And he was a real thug. And we went to Peter Boyle, and he said, we didn't have much of a script to show him, but we told him the story. And he said, you know, I don't want to do films like that anymore. He said, I would like to spend the rest of my career doing romantic comedies. And
Hence Young Frankenstein.
Well, he looked in the mirror and saw Cary Grant, and Mel Brooks saw Young Frankenstein. But we have my lovely wife, Sherry, who's here tonight. We have a very good friend named Phil Rosenthal, who created the television show Everybody Loves Raymond. And Peter Boyle was on that show for, I think, 9 years. And Phil Rosenthal told us that there wasn't a day on the set that he didn't say, you know, I passed on the French Connection. So the next guy I went to, Dick Zanuck said, look, you don't need a star. You don't want a movie star in this part. You want a guy who is Popeye. And I actually auditioned Eddie Egan, but he and I had a different vision of the character. He saw himself, as you can see, as a kind of a pompadour, you know. He saw Cary Grant too, and he looked in the... But there was a guy who was a newspaper reporter in New York who was a very good friend of mine in my drinking days. And his name is Jimmy Breslin. Do you know Jimmy Breslin? Yeah, thank you. Jimmy Breslin is a great journalist of the new journalism from the 1960s. And he also knew all these characters, and he knew the street. And I said to Dick Zanuck, would you go with Jimmy Breslin to play this part? And he said, yeah, I know who Jimmy Breslin is. Why don't you audition him? So I went to Jimmy, and he said, you're crazy. He said, I can't act. And anyway, as a favor to me, we went out on a Monday. I had cast Scheider and the young African-American man in the first scene, Alan Weeks. And I took Alan Weeks and Scheider out with Breslin, and we improvised the first scene, Pick Your Feet in Poughkeepsie. And Breslin was great. He was fantastic. And then Tuesday, he forgot what he did on Monday. And then Wednesday, he didn't show up. And Thursday, he showed up drunk. And I knew I had to fire him. So when he came in on Friday, very contrite, I was prepared to fire him, and he said to me, he said, isn't there a car chase in this movie? I said, yeah. He said, well, I got to tell you, I promised my mother on her deathbed that I would never drive a car, so I don't know how to drive. I said, you're fired. And Gene Hackman was the last man standing. He was proposed by a very good agent in that period named Sue Mengers. And she represented Gene, and she suggested we use him. And I never thought that Gene was right for the role until later. You know?
And by later, it was around the time he won the Academy Award.
About then, I knew that he was perfect.
Yeah.